So a man should have that largesse, that sometimes it's inappropriate, but generally that is a haqq. And there's reasons for that, because the arousal of men is easier than women. A man is much easier aroused. He's much more stimulated by visual stimulation than a woman. So there's those reasons, that there are men who can get themselves in trouble. And there is a hadith, and it's a sound hadith, and the Prophet ﷺ said there's no modesty in teaching the religion. He said that if one of you sees a woman when he's out and feels desire, then let him go to his wife, because she has what she has. And so that's a clear example of what this is about, that a man will have a shahwa, he'll have a desire that if he doesn't fulfill it, then it can actually cause him to do something. But there are people out there that have that problem. So that is a haqq of a man, and it should be fulfilled with that in mind, that it's his haqq, it's a right. Now obviously the Prophet ﷺ said, I detest that one of you should discipline his wife and then want to sleep with her in the evening. So there's an idea also that, that the relationship, and that's husn al-ishra, which is a shared right, that each party treats the other well, with dignity, with good words, without harshness and those things, because that's going to be more conducive to intimacy. So intimacy that becomes more of a perfunctory experience, where somebody is just, it's qada al-watar, it's just fulfilling his desire, then it goes into a very low relationship, and the women will suffer on that end. So when I get to that section, I'll talk a bit more about that. The next one is the right to discipline his children. That the husband has a right to discipline the children. The reason for that is because women tend to be more compassionate, and sometimes that can have a deleterious effect on the child. Now, I just want to say about that disciplining a child, one has to really be careful about that, because the Prophet ﷺ said, all of you are shepherds, and every shepherd is responsible for his flock. And then he mentioned that a man is responsible for his family, and a woman for her children. So a shepherd is compassionate and merciful. A shepherd does not beat the animals. Right? A shepherd knows that it's very easy to get the sheep to do what it wants if it knows how to do what it's doing. So children generally, one has to be careful. And I'm going to get into that, because I'm going to end this class with a section on the children, so I don't want to really go into that now. But I will say about this that before 7, there shouldn't be any physical discipline given to the child, unless it's very slight, pinching or something like that to get their attention. But any beating is before 7. They don't have any taklif, and it's just not right to do that. And even after 7, I'll talk about that thing, because there should never be any actual physical beating of anybody in a domestic situation. Nobody should be the victim of violence in the house. Discipline is not violence. And even when the Prophet ﷺ talked about the darb, which is a striking, he said غير مبرح, which is a non-violent strike. All right, it's very clear. Mubarrah means you don't bruise or damage any tissue, right? So you can't. A violent strike is going to damage tissue, and it's haram to do that. So, but I'll go into that. So that is a right. He has a right to discipline his children. And then the right to house her in his house. And that's important. When a woman marries, she should know at what level the socioeconomic status of the man is, because if he's poor, he's going to have a poor house. And when you marry, you're entering into a contractual agreement accepting that that's the situation. Now, obviously, if he lied and took you to a house that he said it was his house, and then you get married and he takes you to a little one-bedroom place and tells you, welcome home, that's recourse to divorce. That's because there was ghish, he cheated you. But generally, when you enter into the relationship, you're entering into that. Now, a woman also, in the contractual agreement, she relocates with the husband. So if the husband is going to a new house, the woman is obliged by the contractual agreement to relocate with the man. Now, there are conditions in which that doesn't apply. If she didn't receive her dowry, she's not obliged to relocate, because sometimes the dowry will not be given because he hasn't fulfilled his part of the contract. She doesn't have to fulfill hers in that case. So if the dowry hasn't been given. Another reason is that the husband is not trustworthy. In other words, he has shown in the past that he was violent or he did not fulfill his obligations. She does not have to move with him outside of an area where she has family and friends that support her and protect her. So that's her right if there's going to be any abuse. The third is that if the land that she's being asked to relocate is in any way dangerous to her, so if it was in an area that was not safe, if it was going from a Muslim country to a non-Muslim country, things like that, she is not obliged to relocate. And then the fourth one is that if she was not capable of maintaining contact with her parents, she's not obliged to move, or her family. So she has to be able to see her family, to see her parents. If she can't do that, she's not obliged to go and relocate somewhere else. So if any of those conditions are not fulfilled, she has a right to refuse to travel with him. And that's based on la darara wa la dirar. There's no harm and there's no reciprocating harm, because that's a qaida in usul. It's a basic principle. You can't harm somebody. So if the woman was going to be harmed in the relocation in those ways, she is not obliged to relocate. Now, the fourth right is the right to have his house maintained. And there's khilaf about what exactly that means. It's called khidma batina, which is domestic service. There's a khilaf about that. In the Maliki madhab, she should not refuse to do the daily domestic chores. Now, obviously, if a woman is working and the man is working, then it's different. But this is for a woman who is in the home. She's not working. She's in the home. In those cases, she should maintain chores, which the fuqaha mentioned. It included bread making, which has to do with khubz, and sweeping, bed making, laundry, bringing water to the house if it's needed. Now that still applies, believe it or not, in a large part of the world. I mean, it's kind of odd to think about that, but large part of the world, that still applies. Now, there is in the Maliki madhab, if a woman is a sharifa, and I'll go into what connotes that. Well, it's basically the hadith we did about the four things. If she has one of those qualities, then her status is elevated, and she should be given domestic help if she asks for it. And when Fatima asked for domestic help, the Prophet ﷺ told her to do the dhikr. I mean, that's the Prophet ﷺ's daughter, and she's a model for women. And also because he didn't let her wear gold. Women can wear gold, but his daughter did not wear gold. She had a special status amongst the women, alayhi salam. So she's not responsible for anything that involves craftsmanship, like sewing, embroidery, milling flour, or work that is normally done for a wage. She doesn't have to do any of that. So she doesn't have to sew things. She doesn't have to, darn the socks or do those type things. If she wants to, then that's from her good will. There's a beautiful hadith of Asma, who was the daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and she said, when Zubair married me, he had no wealth, nor any servant, in fact nothing save a camel that carried water in his horse. I used to feed his horse, get water, pull up his bucket, and knead dough. Although I could not bake bread at the time, so some neighboring women of the Ansar used to bake my bread for me. And then she said, we were sincere women. She said, kunna mukhlisat. In other words, we were doing this for Allah. So she's indicating, after saying all that, we were doing this for Allah. Because that's really drudgery. I even used to carry on my head date seeds from a portion of the land the Messenger of Allah had allotted to him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So a man should have that largesse, that sometimes it's inappropriate. But generally that is a haqq. And there's reasons for that because